Well, the critical role MSMEs play in driving economic growth and fostering financial inclusion in India is very well documented. But within this diverse sector, micro-enterprises and nano-entrepreneurs, which constitute 98% of the MSME segment, are pivotal, and it is this segment that we put the spotlight on today ahead of the World MSME Day. Now, despite their potential, they face a substantial credit gap, with only 11% of these enterprises having access to formal credit and barely 30% of their credit demand being met. To address the pressing need to bridge this credit gap through innovative financial solutions, I have with me today an esteemed panel of guests: Geeta Goel, the Managing Director at MSDF India; Vineet Sukumar, the founder and MD of Vivriti Capital; and Hardika Shah, the founder and CEO of Kinara Capital. Geeta, I'll start with you. Your study pointing to the fact that 92% of nano enterprises in your sample survey have smartphones, 96% are using UPI today. How is all of this changing the dynamics of the credit market for MSMEs?
So I think it actually allows us to create significant data trails on the nano entrepreneurs, which was not the case 3 years ago. And each year we have seen an improvement. So as you mentioned, Ritu, the access to smartphones allows surrogate data sets to be created, whether it is payment of utility bills, whether it is payment to UPI transactions, which allows the credit givers or the lenders to, create they don't have a credit history, but you create a data set on the customers or the nano entrepreneurs.
Even in 2024, we're talking about barely 25-30% of the debt being sourced formally. How are you at Kinara addressing this without compromising, the underwriting or the risk standards?
Yeah, so at Kinara, we have been transforming lives, livelihoods, and local economies by providing unsecured business loans to these micro entrepreneurs. And we're doing this in a high-touch, high-tech model. So as Geeta was mentioning, today we have a lot of alternate data available, and we use all of this information to make a credit decision through our AI ML model, so that we give that decision within 24 hours so that the customer has the capital to grow their business. And that capital need not be based on accountants, provisional statements, or stock statements, and so on. And this is really the differentiation that is required if we want to continue to service this segment, which, as we know, as you said, is one of the growth engines of our economy. And therefore, we need to continue to figure out alternate ways to support this credit gap.
How are these credit gaps being addressed by some of the new age players? And would you also say some of the policy measures, the credit guarantee schemes that have been announced by the government focused on MSMEs, have they really moved the needle?
I think fundamentally, the data architecture that has come in place has made a world of difference to the way MSMEs are being financed and how nano entrepreneurs are getting money. In the past, say 7-8 years back, what we used to see was that a shop would have 8 visiting cards. Today, the shop has maybe 2 or 3 POS machines, and faceless lenders are providing financing to these shops today using the data that is emerging from these POS machines, right? Today, lenders are not just providing money, but also providing solutions to these nano entrepreneurs to be able to manage GST, to be able to manage payroll, to be able to manage ledgers, in addition to providing financing. And therefore, there is really a move to take them up the value chain. Credit guarantee schemes are still to really make a mark. And I would actually tend to argue that credit guarantee schemes play a much larger role in secondary markets rather than primary markets.
Hardika, let's talk about you. At Kinara, you disbursed some 6,200 crores of loans. Your AUM has crossed 3,000 crores. At what pace is this growing, and how is asset quality shaping up, which seems to be one of the concerns traditional players highlight? And, are there pockets where you're seeing higher credit demand than others? Any trends in the MSME lending you could highlight for us?
First of all, I would say that we are looking at a growth, a CAGR of around 40-45%. And then I think that's a sustainable approach. In terms of credit quality, largely when we're looking at unsecured business lending, we must remember that this is a different asset class, and therefore the comparatives have to be very uniquely repositioned for unsecured business lending. And so from a credit quality perspective, at the end of the day, we're profitable, we've remained profitable, we have figured out the unit level economics of how to make this business work and scale. One more thing I would like to add on the formalization. Udyam registration is a big element that has really brought formalization to these nano entrepreneurs. So where we don't have a lot of other standardized mechanisms, the Udyam registration move and the push that is happening in the last several years. Now we have 5-6 crore MSMEs that are registered. That will also help reshape how we think of MSMEs going from unregistered to registered businesses.
What, according to you, are the top policy interventions that are needed to unlock credit to the sector, and what can be improved in what we already have in terms of existing schemes?
So I would like to say, Ritu, I think there are 3 levels at which work needs to be done. One is just understanding the nano entrepreneur cash flows, which people like Kinara are doing. The other is actually deepening the market in terms of disintermediation and adding extra levels, which I think Vineet and Vivriti are doing very well. The third, to your point of creating an enabling environment or policy schemes, I think Udyam registration is a great first step. I feel Udyam is like the Aadhaar moment, on the nano entrepreneur side. The UPI moment for this sector will actually be when we are able to create data scores based on different data sets that exist on the nano entrepreneurs. But most importantly, it also gives data sets back to the government to say, which are the sectors, which are the regions, which are, the stage gates, which if pushed through schemes, whether they're guarantees, interest subventions, returnable grants, which are facing a gap, and with those schemes, they can actually help, fuel the economy further.
If you were to put down a wish list, for the MSME sector ahead of the budget, what would be some of the top 2 or 3 items?
And the way we have gone about doing it is work with aggregators or create such aggregators, right? When we say work with aggregators, that could be NBFCs that are in turn doing retail financing to such entrepreneurs, or alternatively create dedicated alternative pools of capital backed by impact money and partially commercial money that can channelize money to these entrepreneurs. So if I were to create a wish list for the budget, I think there is more to be done to make sure that these vehicles, so to speak, can have longevity, can have scale, can have the right tax treatment allocated to them, which can then permit these vehicles to raise capital at a very efficient pace. While a lot has been done on formalizing the market using Udyam, using GST, now the next step is about how can we connect external capital, both domestic and international, to this market in the best possible way. And that's where I think a lot of the focus of the current government can go towards.
It was a pleasure speaking to all 3 of you, and thank you very much for your time again.